Greater Cleveland. I'm Troy Meinhardt, member of the Library Board of Trustees. We're pleased to partner with the League on these forums because we believe, as the League does, sensible, responsible civil discourse based on substance rather than partisanship is essential for civic improvement. Regional government is as old as Greek city-states, but in recent decades, a new model has emerged, often called new regionalism. Strategies vary, but the basic idea is to help a region thrive by compelling a city and its suburbs to work together toward the common good. Libraries have long known the power of sharing for the common good. Indeed, they were created with that premise. I'm quite proud of our Shaker Library. In 1983, we joined CleveNet, a consortium of 43 library systems across 12 counties, sharing 12 million items in Northeast Ohio. This valuable connection provides our community with a wealth of material. We welcome you and the League, and I'm now pleased to introduce its president, Audrey Morris, who will introduce tonight's panel.
Thank you all for coming this evening. The League of Women Voters is pleased to partner with the Shaker Heights Public Library to bring you this forum on regionalism and what steps we should be taking in Shaker and Northeast Ohio. Before I introduce our moderator, Judy Rawson, I'd like to remind you that we're going to have another forum next week at the Case Western Reserve Siegel facility in Beechwood on redistricting and voting rights in Ohio. So I encourage you to attend that. I'd like to introduce our moderator, Judy Rawson. Judy has a long and illustrious career in the public and private sectors of Shaker Heights and Cleveland. Judy served the city of Shaker Heights for 21 years as city council member and subsequently completed 2 terms as mayor. As mayor, she was noted for her leadership on regional economic development and tax. Judy also served on the Commission on Reform of Cuyahoga County Government and as an assistant director for law for the city of Cleveland. One of her passions throughout her years of public service was protecting cities and historic suburbs by combating mindless urban sprawl. Discovering that words don't really carry the message effectively, she turned to photography. In her photographic work, she has shown that Cleveland possesses endless visual interest, especially if we pause to enjoy the colorful rest of our heritage, these are Judy's words, the graphic drama of bridges, smokestacks, and historic neighborhoods, and now the emerging details all over the city. Without further ado, Judy Rawson.
Thank you, Audrey. I didn't write that for tonight. They've been on my website, so that was very good research from the library. There are lots of seats up front, those of you who are standing in the back. So let me tell you what we're going to do tonight. I'm going to give a very short introduction of the panelists. I'm going to lay out a few premises that I think we can all agree on so they don't have to state them. I'll just get them out of the way up front. Then we're going to talk about 4 ambitious but realistic regional initiatives. And each panelist is going to kick off one of them. We're going to spend a half an hour or 7 minutes apiece discussing each of them. Then there will be 20 minutes of questions from all of you on cards that will be handed out. And I'll present those to the panelists. And then we'll have a concluding 1 to 2 minute statement from each of the panelists on where they hope to see regionalism after 5 more years of working on it. So, with that, we have an hour and a half. We're going to be finished at 8:30, so it's a tight agenda. So, Armond Budish, the county executive, will be here any minute. So, I'm going to lay out the premises first and then introduce the panelists, and I'll bet they'll be here by then. So for purposes of tonight, we will focus on Cuyahoga County as the region. You can talk about the 7-county region for other purposes, but we're just talking about the county. Our collective countywide goal is to maintain and improve services so that this county is sustainable, more efficient, and more attractive to new businesses and residents without raising taxes. But But because taxes are such an issue, don't forget that we also have to stimulate revenue-rich development in a way that's fair to all jurisdictions. And that's probably the tough spot, challenge. The county is currently trying to be helpful to all communities using the model of shared services and joint purchasing. We are in the stage of building trust between communities. And as I watch them and hear about what they're doing, and many of you heard a year ago, the county is making, the countywide team is making steady progress on a number of invisible things like sewers, information technology, public safety, master planning, demolition, healthcare coverage, a regional crime lab, and economic development. A lot of this is relatively invisible, but it is a crucial first step to build trust for the more ambitious efforts. We also rely heavily on partnerships with private and nonprofit institutions, but we're not going to talk about those partnerships tonight. We're going to talk about what is it that the government can do. So the question today, or tonight, is what are 4 of the strongest and most feasible possibilities for smart regional collaboration, and what is it going to take for us to achieve them? And I'm guessing that in the questions you all will have a few ideas too. So the introductions. Armond is our most senior, and because we all know each other fairly well in this room, I am going to take the liberty, although I usually don't do it, of just keeping us on a first name basis. I think that will be more informal. Armond Budish has been the Cuyahoga County Executive since 2015. Prior to that, Mr. Budish served 4 terms in the Ohio House of Representatives, including 2 terms as minority leader and a term as speaker. Earl Leiken, next, is currently the mayor of Shaker Heights and has been since 2008. Prior to 2008, Earl practiced law and served first as a member of the Shaker Board of Education and later as a member of City Council. I should say, Armond, you've been introduced. Welcome.
Okay.
and it was just really a standing ovation. I should say that all of this is an extraordinary panel. They have all worked really hard on regionalism. And Earl has been working, you all surely are aware of this, pretty hard recently. Hunter Morrison, next in line, raise your hand, thank you, was Cleveland's planning director for 2 decades and co-author of Cleveland's Civic Vision 2000 plans. He then headed Youngstown State University Center for Urban and Regional Studies under President David Sweet and is now a senior fellow in urban planning at Cleveland State University. And finally, Eddie Kraus serves as the Cuyahoga County Director of Regional Collaboration. So the rubber meets the road in Eddie's office. He also serves on Solon City Council, so that as we get good ideas, he's going to be well positioned to sell them to councils. So we've worked together and we've developed 4 issues that we thought would be pretty interesting to discuss tonight. And let me just tick them off, and then I'm going to ask each of our panelists to very briefly kick off the discussion of one of those issues, and then we'll just have a conversation, 7 minutes on each issue before we ask for questions and comments from all of you. The 4 issues are a countywide pre-K program, and Armond Budish is going to kick off that discussion. A voluntary merger of fire and police dispatch among interested clusters of communities, kicked off by Eddie Kraus. He's been working hard on that. Then we're going to shift to 2 issues that have a little bit more to do with revenue raising and sharing without just raising taxes. So for any new business attracted to the county, can we come up with a formula for sharing the commercial tax base perhaps back into a regionalism fund or an economic development fund. Earl, Leiken's going to kick that off. And then finally, we need coordinated planning to encourage more, or do we need coordinated planning to encourage more dense development on land that is already served by utilities and transit? And that's a very big idea. And Hunter Morrison is going to kick that off. So with that, Mr. Budish, will you start us out, please, on the first issue of pre-K kindergarten? And I'm going to be over here waving to you when we need to move on. You can sit. We've got a, you can stand also if you want. But we've got some microphones that you all to share.
I almost never have to raise the microphone. So it's great to be here tonight, and I appreciate Judy and Michael Barron putting this thing together, the League of Women Voters. Thank you all. And this is certainly an important topic. And I'm pleased to be able to talk about pre-kindergarten. When we first, I've been in my new office, Cuyahoga County Executive, for now about a year and a half. And we were trying to figure out where we could be most impactful. There's different ways to do regional work in Cuyahoga County. One, Eddie will talk about, which is basically helping the communities come together to do things themselves with our help, leadership, and sometimes financial support. The other way is for us to provide services in collaboration with the communities, and that's what the pre-K program is all about. So we were looking at ways that we could be most impactful in Cuyahoga County, and people came to me, we invited people in to talk about different issues and programs and proposals, and actually my now Chief of Staff, Sharon Sobel-Jordan, helped put together a group to talk about pre-kindergarten education. And it was amazing when I sat and listened and learned about how impactful pre-kindergarten education can be. The fact is that there's lots of studies out there. There's national studies and there's local study. And it is clear that when a child gets a good start in life, at age 3 or age 4, starts getting a good high quality, and I emphasize high quality education, they do better throughout the rest of their life. They read better in 3rd grade. They tend to graduate high school. They tend to get better jobs after high school. They tend to be physically and mentally healthier throughout their lives. They stay out of the criminal justice system, which, by the way, saves cities and county money. So there's no silver bullet, but this is about as close as you get to a silver bullet, is a high-quality pre-kindergarten education. Now, the county's been in the business of high-quality pre-K for a number of years. The county's been spending about $9 million a year to support high-quality pre-K throughout the county, and that means throughout the county. So, City of Cleveland and suburbs, we've been supporting high-quality pre-K. We've been serving about 2,000 kids a year at 300% of poverty or under. I'm already getting the high sign, so I'm going to keep going for another minute or two.
Or maybe 10 seconds.
All right, so we've been serving the community with high-quality pre-K, but we've only been serving 2,000 kids. We were looking to at least to double that if we could. That was our goal. And that would require another $20 million over the next 4 years. We found $10 million in our budget, which was difficult because we were in a difficult budget period. And then we went out and raised another $12 million from the business community and the foundations, and put together a $22 million fund, which over the next 4 years will double, in fact, maybe slightly more than double the number of kids in high-quality pre-K. It's impactful, it's significant for the county, it's regional, and it's very exciting.
Please. please, and also lay out some of the obstacles on your topic.
Okay. First, I just want to quickly mention 4 people who are here tonight, council members Ann Williams, Trey Roeder, Sean Malone, and my wife Ellen. And the reason I'm mentioning Ellen is that she spent her career as a preschool educator. I want to commend Armond for taking on this issue, as well as the county council. We often talk about the achievement gap, and but we go about dealing with it in the wrong way. The way we go about it is to test students throughout their academic career after they get to school at age 5, and then we criticize the schools where underprivileged children are not doing well and give them bad ratings and attack the teachers. As Judy mentioned, I spent 8 years as a school board member, and every study I've seen indicates that the critical problem with underprivileged students is in the preschool years. If you think about how privileged our children, and in my case my grandchildren, are by having highly educated parents who devote great effort to helping them learn how to read and do math and do perform in other subjects, who travel with them, you can see that these kids have an enormous advantage over kids who come from a different kind of environment. And so if we focus on the preschool years and try to prepare the children who need a great deal of help, I think we're going to see much better results than what we get with the current system. I just have to mention one anecdote about it. I asked my 8-year-old grandchild, my granddaughter Sasha, what she had learned in school that day. And she said, "Papa, school is not just about learning." And I said, "Sasha, what else could it be about?" And she said, "It's about testing." So that indicates, I think that we're moving in the wrong direction, and that we need to focus more heavily on what's more important. And I think it's what the county is focusing on, getting kids prepared in those preschool years, which will carry them forward throughout their educational life.
Are you going to talk about your issue?
I thought we were responding to Armond.
Oh, okay. We can do
Okay.
it that way. All right, well, let's have a conversation now about Armond's issue for 7 minutes. And then we'll move on to the next one.
Can I just add one thing, because Earl reminded me, my wife is here too, Amy, and somewhere back there. I want to make sure I introduce Amy. And also, I think I saw the county councilwoman, Chantel Brown, who's been involved and a leader in not only the pre-K, but a number of our initiatives, some of which Eddie will be talking about as well.
How about some obstacles as to universal pre-K? And then we can have a conversation.
The biggest obstacle is the sustainability. So we came up with a $22 million fund, which will be sustainable for 4 years. We will double the number of kids in high quality throughout the county for 4 years. But it's 4 years, and that gives us 4 years to do our next stage, which is advocacy. We need help from the state and or federal government. I was very pleased to see that Hillary Clinton's campaign, she's talking about pre-K as part of her platform. The state government in New York is the place where the money has come from for the city of New York's pre-K program, and so I'm hopeful that we will be able to build the coalition necessary, and that's what we're working on starting immediately. And Chantel's part of that to make this happen, to draw support from the state. That's the biggest hurdle we have, is the funding.
And so, Eddie, from your seat, do you see this, how do you see this affecting our ability to attract residents and businesses and maybe even save money?
Well, I mean, for me, Judy was involved in the infant stages of the new county government, and I started in the county prosecutor's office in 1986. So I've seen a whole different form of government with 3 commissions. And this is really it's a new day for the county. I've seen it firsthand about the way that the operation works now with the county executive and 11 county council members. Armond, when Armond first came in and started taking a look at the budget, and there were some very difficult challenges in the budget, and worked directly with Chairman of the Finance Committee, Dave Greenspan, all of the county council members, the President, Dan Brady, to not only fill the hole in the budget, but make sure there are other opportunities, so initiatives that Armond and our team really wanted to have. And, pre-K was one of those initiatives. Infant mortality, a huge problem within our community, is another initiative. And the whole issue of workforce, making sure that we fill the skills gap for the employers that want the jobs and those that are looking for the jobs but don't have the proper skills. So those are the 3 huge initiatives that were put into the budget, and it was because the leadership of the executive and the leadership of county council, I know Chantel's here, and that creates a very great working relationship. And that's a whole new dynamic for this county, and I think people are just starting to regain that trust, because that trust was broken several years ago. I'm sure you followed the trials and what happened during the county corruption scandal. And so we're coming out of it, and we're building trust. And the way you build trust is you work directly and transparently between the executive's office and county council, and you come up with these compromises, and you come up with these ways to work together. And the pre-K initiative is just one of those examples of that excellent working relationship that we've established with county council, and now the residents are beginning to build that trust again.
Hunter, we probably need to move on, but do you want to add anything here?
Well, I'd only say that from a sort of broad regional perspective, in terms of this region being able to compete, having an educated workforce is a critical function, and you have to start. Actually, it's a neonatal problem. You really start before and right after a child is born. But to create an environment and a culture of achievement that's broad-based in a community not only affects the kids, but it affects our ability overall to compete. And the word that goes out about how we treat each other, is this a good place to be?
Thank you. All right, I'm going to throw the ball now to Eddie to give us a 2-minute.
Since these guys ate up my
The issue of saving money through one specific idea.
Yeah, so I'll just give you an example. So my first week on the job, I started learning about all the shared services that the county provides for municipalities. Sewer work, IT work, HR work, county planning, an impact unit from the sheriff's office. But the one thing everyone told me was, don't touch police and fire. And so, and if anyone knows about a city's budget, about 60-65% of a city's budget just goes to police and fire alone. And everything else is just sprinkled in. And so, to me, the most important issues were police and fire. And I wanted to tackle police and fire because police and fire have been working together through mutual aid, through actual aid for many, many years. As a matter of fact, Shaker Heights, Cleveland Heights, and University Heights have had a joint dispatch center for many, many years. So police and fire have always been sort of ahead of the curve and willing to build bridges and work together as a community. So I decided to tackle the issue of regional dispatch, and what I found was, number one, the police and fire chiefs throughout the county are more than willing to work at it and to work at regional dispatch, and 2, it saves lives. I'll give you 2 examples. So we opened a Parma Regional Dispatch Center at an old library in Parma. And it's Parma Heights, Brooklyn, and soon to be Brook Park. There was a pizza shop robbery, a very serious robbery that happened in Parma. And so the guy that committed the robbery went down Ridge Road and he got on 480 and he traveled, out of the city of Parma. And but for the regional dispatch center to make sure that all 4 of those communities responded, caught the guy, apprehended him, solved the crime, those type of crimes would not be solved. I'll give you another example. Chagrin Falls recently had a murder at Hamlin Hills, which is a retirement home. And Chagrin Falls is a small town, but they're part of the Chagrin Valley Dispatch Center. It's the number 2 rated dispatch center in the United States of America. It's housed out of Bedford Hospital. So because of the response all 14 communities responded to the murder scene, and they were able to solve the murder. So in this day and age, you can't do it alone. I mean, especially with police and fire, you have to have regional dispatch. And with regional dispatch, eventually that paves the way for regional jails, regional police, regional fire, because in the economies of scale, municipalities just are not going to be able to handle their budgets anymore with increases in union contracts and pay raises. And sooner or later, we're going to have to go to a regional system when it comes to public safety. It saves lives, it costs less, and it's much more efficient in terms of technology, operations, interoperability between the departments.
Any obstacles, and then the rest of the panel will want to chime in.
Well, the great thing is you have leaders like Earl Leiken and many mayors throughout the community, because the most important aspect of regional collaboration, it's leadership. It comes from the top. The difficult part is you have to deal with people's jobs. You have to deal with a lot of union contracts that are very, very difficult to go through. You have to deal with, every city has their own ladder truck, which costs $1 million to buy and are only used once or twice a year. So you have to do with the equipment and being able to try to come up with a way to share equipment so each community, can share in those resources. You have buildings. We've got probably over 85 to 90 firehouses in Cuyahoga County. We have firehouses literally that are less than a mile apart, but they're in different communities. So the firemen can't respond back and forth if they're in a different community. Well, that's outrageous to have that. So we should be able to, the borders should be so fluid that we should be able to have actual aid in all of our communities. And I can tell you, Earl Leiken, with the help of Cleveland Heights, University Heights, and South Euclid, just worked out an agreement for a joint dispatch center between those 4 communities. And it's because the leaders of those 4 communities that the citizens in those 4 communities are going to have better services, better technology, and a better response time to emergencies and the difficult situations that they face.
In terms of regionalizing efforts, as Eddie explained, public safety is one big area. So we're looking and the dispatch centers are huge. It's really been a savings, and we've been the incentivizer, the leader in this effort. We're looking at a number of other things. So just to give an example, Eddie mentioned the impact unit of the Sheriff's Department. We have been helping communities when they need help, they call. We have deputies we can send out to supplement periodically. If there's a festival or an event or something, or there's some big concern, we can be helpful. But that's limited. We don't have unlimited staff. For the Republican National Convention, we went about purchasing 5 cameras. Mobile cameras that each have like 4 or 5 cameras on them, and we deployed them around the county in select areas, and we monitored them, live monitoring 24/7. So we made arrangements with the communities where those were located. The communities were on notice that if we saw anything suspicious, we would immediately contact them. They would send out their police officers. It was a way to basically multiply the impact of their own police force. And our goal, and it worked very well during the RNC, the city of Cleveland, of course, was covering the downtown area, but county's big and there could have been problems. Thank God there weren't in other places. But it worked very well, and we're looking at expanding that. And again, more resources, more opportunity to expand.
Earl?
Well, we've had great help from Armond and Ed and Chantel Brown. I want to thank Chantel for all she's done for Shaker Heights and being able to form this joint dispatch center for police and fire. And we've signed an agreement, and we're well on our way to getting that done. I appreciate very much the support of our city council with that. We have tried actually to move beyond that and consolidate fire departments. As many of you know, we made an effort to consolidate with University Heights. And I think those kinds of consolidations are going to be increasingly important in the future. That effort failed, but that's okay, because of what was going on in University Heights, not because Shakers, Council, and our citizens weren't solidly in support of it. I think those efforts need to continue. We shouldn't be stopped by a failure. I think Winston Churchill said, success is moving from failure to failure to failure with enthusiasm. So that's what I do.
So what would it take to get that done?
It takes, well, in this instance, it takes the support of the other city. In
Right.
this particular instance, generally, it takes strong leadership from the communities, because there are always people who oppose it. Whether in the case of fire, there have been three efforts in Cuyahoga County, none of which has succeeded. There's always somebody who stands up and says, no, this is a bad idea, whether it be the fire chiefs, whether it be the firefighters, whether it be some citizens in the community who say they want to hang on to the status quo and are afraid of change. So it takes strong political leadership to really overcome that and to deal with that and to say we have to think about what's in the best interest of our citizens, and given that fact that this is in the best interest because it's going to provide the same or better service with significant cost savings, we're moving forward. We expect opposition, but we're moving forward.
I will add, I also tried this when I was mayor of Shaker Heights and failed. And my conclusion was that the only incentive that would work is some external entity coming in and saying, we'll build you a new firehouse for 2 communities if you do this, or we'll buy the ladder truck. We'll put some upfront, huge capital need and get it taken care of. Then the political leadership gets real interested in that issue. Did you get into this at all, Hunter, in your study?
Not really, no.
Okay.
We didn't get to the operational side.
Okay. Anything more on this, or should we move on to economic development and tax sharing?
The other thing I would just emphasize that the communities want leadership from the county. Because of the structure of the government, having an executive, having a county council, mayors like Earl Leiken and the 58 other mayors that we deal with on a daily basis really have welcomed the county's leadership. I wouldn't call it a bully pulpit, but I would call it much more of an effective form of government. Having an executive where the buck stops with Armond Budish, having 11 council members so that when an issue happens in Shaker Heights, and the other day, we had a great meeting in Bedford Heights with the Mayor Fletcher Berger, and we did Chantal and I and a few others did a ride around, and we do this on a daily basis. It becomes a much more of a coordinated effort, a fluid effort, and so communities now demand and expect the leadership from their county to provide those type of incentives, those type of opportunities to really move the needle forward. And I think residents are going to start to expect that and demand that from everybody.
Starting with all of you.
Maybe I should just add something on the other side of this picture, just to make sure we recognize where we are. When the changes that Judy led in the county government, I think, have been tremendous, and have really helped us move this county forward. But there was no more money. There's no more money. The budget hasn't changed from the time that was well before county government changed. So the public expected us to do a whole lot more with no more money. We've done a whole lot of things by being creative, by saving, doing cost savings. We built a convention center. We built a global center for health. We built a new hotel. We have put $50 million into demolition. We put $10 million into pre-K. We put $3 million a year into infant mortality. I mean, we've done a lot of things by being prudent with our finances. But having said that, it's not unlimited. There was no more money. And so, there's limits on what the county can do. I just say that as a precautionary comment, because, there's a lot of things that would be great to do if we had more money.
And the old model is we looked to the county or the state to swoop in with, or the Fed, swoop in with more money and fix the problem. So the rest of this discussion is going to be two issues to try to help you with that problem, Armond. Economic development with some way of sharing the upside among communities or back into an economic development fund, which Earl's going to kick off, and then Hunter, who's just been studying this for what, 3 years? Has some other pretty good ideas.
Well, if you know Judy Rawson, you know she's always pushing you to take on the tough issues, and she was quite insistent that we do that tonight, that we look to the future and not the past. And so here comes the tough one. The problem that you're hearing about in this political year of enormous income disparities between and among individuals is basically also reflected in our county with enormous disparities among our communities. You have communities like Solon and like Beechwood and like Westlake, which have extremely strong commercial tax bases and are able to provide excellent services with low taxes. By contrast, there are other communities like East Cleveland, Maple Heights, Garfield Heights, which are at the opposite extreme. They're in and out of the state watch, and in the case of East Cleveland, they're really unable to provide basic services. And others are somewhere in between. We're able to provide first-rate services, but our taxes are high. Cleveland, which is doing a great job downtown, is really desperate for more revenue in its neighborhoods. But we're all one county. We're one unit of government. And there really isn't any logical reason why Beechwood, for instance, or Solon, or Westlake should get virtually all the benefit from a new company moving into that community, often with considerable support from the county, and the rest of the county doesn't share appropriately in that benefit. The state of Minnesota has, since 1971, had a program called the Minnesota Disparities Act, which has allowed for some form of revenue sharing as new companies move into the state. And something like that is certainly possible here. If we can achieve the kind of reform of county government that we did under Judy's leadership and that of others, we can manage to do this as well. It is true that communities make an investment to get the business, and they're entitled to a credit for that investment. They're entitled to a return of what they've invested before they start sharing. But beyond that, I think it is desirable that there be some kind of a sharing. And I do understand that this is controversial. I don't expect Armond or Ed to weigh in on this tonight. This is something that needs considerable thought. But it is a real problem affecting Cleveland and the inner ring suburbs especially. And this is a solution with great potential and needs to be explored. Mayor Kern in Hudson wanted to explore, is exploring it, has put together a group that's looking at it on a broader basis. But I think the county is really the appropriate level of government for dealing with this. And I think it will make for a stronger county, and a stronger county in the long term is in everybody's interest.
Thank you, Earl. Hunter, I'll bet you got something to say.
Well, I think it's really very critical to look at the regions, certainly if you take the county as a region, at the county's economic development context as a whole. It's a singular job market. It's a singular retail market. What we see as we look across the county and across the region as a whole, there are 700 taxing jurisdictions, 400 municipalities and townships, each one of them having home rule. And one of the big challenges is that each of those jurisdictions is mandated, as you know, Judy, to balance their budget every year. So they will do that the best way they know how. And if you're the mayor of Westlake, you'll go for as high a revenue stream as you can get and keep your costs down so that you have a balanced budget. If you're the mayor of East Cleveland, you actually have the same job to do. The reality is the fragmentation works to the disadvantage of these communities, not just on tax revenue, but also on being suckered. Some years ago, several decades ago, actually, we realized that there was far more retail than there is in fact market. And that's not a surprise, given that the region as a whole, all 12 counties, have actually shrunk since 1970. So what happens is that jobs and the investment just moves from community to community. And that's where you get the abandoned malls, whether it's Richmond Mall or Randall Park, not only here, but throughout Northeast Ohio. It does not work to the advantage of our communities when we cannot in some way share those revenues that come from the shared market. And we cannot share the access to jobs which are in fact being accessed across the market. That's a structural problem in terms of home rule, but it's also an attitudinal problem. And I think Earl, you're getting at it from the perspective of let's figure out some ways, regardless of what the state law says about home rule, that we can collaborate together, because we are in fact we absolutely need to do that. There's insufficient market to go around if we're simply trading dollars on retail outlets, community to community.
Yeah, and let me just say, I mean, my own view is it may require some legislation at the state level to prevent it. And the other thing is I'm really focused on the commercial tax base, which is, I think, something that we really need to look at and consider, and particularly with respect to property taxes.
Debbie, you want to chime in? And I think it would be interesting to tell the group what you do in the area of economic development that would be relevant to this subject.
So, the county is extremely active in economic development. Actually, as part of the new charter, economic development and job creation was one of the most important aspects of the change of the charter. Historically, the county was not involved in economic development. It was strictly health and human services as probably one part of the large portion of the budget, and funding the entire court system for the county was the other part. But since the change, the county is very active. Whether it's in terms of a CBDG grant, a community development block grant, we have a storefront renovation program that we run through all of the municipalities. We have various municipal loans. Actually, Shaker Heights was the recipient of a casino loan that was given out to partially fund the Van Aken project, which is not just a project for Shaker Heights, which is going to be terrific, but it's a project for the whole region. To be able to take advantage of that. Euclid was a recipient, another of the casino funds, to rejuvenate their whole lakefront in Euclid. And these examples, first of all, it's examples of the executive and county council really working together and come up with that strategy outside of the downtown, because obviously you want the downtown to thrive, but you also have, if you look at the first-ring suburban communities, that's about 40% of the county. That represents probably at least the population, even more than the population of the city of Cleveland. So if you take that laser focus that's been focused on downtown and great areas like Ohio City and Tremont and Detroit Shoreway, and you start shifting that focus, and I'm not meaning just the county's focus, but hopefully foundation money and everyone's focus, and you look at the first ring communities and you start to focus on what can be done to, you know, the old Severance Center, what can be done to the old North Randall Mall, what can be done to, you know, the old Euclid Mall, what can be done to some of the sites in Parma that have been devastated, what can be done to Broadway, if you've ever gone down Broadway in Maple Heights, I mean, it's been devastated, in Garfield Heights, and I can go on in the first ring communities, but we really need to start to shift the focus and make sure that as much as we've, you know, had that laser focus on Cleveland and everything in the rejuvenation of Cleveland, we have to begin to really start to look at the first ring as an entire community. And Earl Leiken was the chair of the first ring suburbs, and they've advanced so much in terms of their efforts, and now Mike Summers of Lakewood is the new chair of the group, and they really have come together really to enhance this whole issue of economic development, redevelopment, looking at taking these old sites and redeveloping them, but don't just look at it as an opportunity for a mall, but look at it holistically, so you can look at making sure there's good public transportation when it comes to the first ring suburbs, making sure that people can get to the jobs, and making sure that we solve the housing crisis with all the vacant homes, with all the vacant properties, which Cleveland gets all the attention, but I can tell you that so much of the mortgage meltdown is felt in the first ring suburban communities. Go to some of the houses, you know, in Maple Heights, some of the streets in Maple Heights, and I can tell you that they were really ground zero for a lot of the foreclosure crisis. So we have to have that same vision in terms of the first ring suburban communities.
So as a final question on this, getting back to baby steps, Earl, this is politically a really tough issue. When you chaired the first Suburbs Consortium, did 2 or more suburbs ever come together and say, let's apply for a joint grant and do something that's going to benefit both our communities?
Yes, we did. We applied for joint grants, I recall, with University Heights. I think we've done some with Cleveland Heights as well. So we have done that.
What made that happen?
Well, we saw we had a common interest in something, and we felt that we would benefit from working together. In terms of baby steps, I think baby steps would be to do this kind of incrementally, do it with a very small percentage of tax of revenue sharing. When a new company comes into a community, put it into a common fund that can in some way benefit all communities, and do it from year to year, because it can work out. In some years, some communities benefit, other years other communities benefit, and getting people comfortable with the approach, I think, is one way of trying to get a start, and then move perhaps from there.
Thank you. Okay, our fourth issue, Hunter is going to kick off, and he's just studied it for 3 years. But it's basically to think about more dense development, taking advantage of utilities and transit that's already in place. So we're leveraging prior investments made in this county.
Well, and Judy, in many ways, Eddie teed up the discussion about economic development and placemaking, particularly in the first suburbs of Cuyahoga County. Let me back off for a minute and say I've had the privilege, Joe McDonald, one of the team members, now working at NOACA. Our team had the opportunity for a 3-year period to look very broadly and very long at the region. In fact, we went all the way back to the original land grants in King Charles. To really understand what that, I mean, this is a long view, to really understand what makes Northeast Ohio tick, and to look at it up to 2040 for a 12-county region, which is basically the entirety of the Western Reserve. A couple of big observations. First of all, it's a large region. It's the size and population of Connecticut. Second of all, it's got 4 major metros in Cleveland, Akron, and Canton, and the Youngstown, Warren area. Thirdly, it has not been growing. The rest of the country has grown almost doubled its population since 1970, and we have lost population. At the same time as we've gone from 4 million people to slightly below 4 million people, we've expanded our footprint by about 25%. Projections done by NOAC and the other NPOs back 25, 30 years ago suggested we'd be a region of 5 million people. And we built the infrastructure for 5 million people. We're just missing 1 million people. We just get that 1 million people back, all these issues would disappear. Cuyahoga County is really ground zero of that issue. All of the older counties, Summit and Stark, Mahoning and Trumbull, are challenged. Cuyahoga County has, for the last 40 years, been spreading out not only within the county but to the outlying areas, suggesting that the long-term future is not great. That's not a projection that anybody in this room cares to believe in, but to change that course is going to require concerted effort, the sort of things that are going on that we've been talking about. In terms of a long-term building strategy, there are a couple of things that we've looked at. One is changing demographics. There's an aging baby boomer population that doesn't want to live in big houses and is coming back to places like University Circle and downtown. Their kids, particularly the kids who grew up on those far suburban subdivisions, don't want that either. And that's leading to the market, to downtown, which we think, quite frankly, logically articulates not all the way to another county, but to the next communities over, the Lakewoods and the Shakers and the Cleveland Heights. If we talk about shared services, one of the shared assets around which to build a different future that responds to changing market conditions and puts us into a much more competitive position nationally and internationally, one of the key assets we have is transit. We have one of the best transit system in the state of Ohio, and notwithstanding lackluster state support, we have one of the best transit systems in the country. And the city of Cleveland and the first suburbs are zoned for supporting transit. It's a hidden asset. Now, we're sitting here right opposite the Van Aken line. We all live in Shaker, grew up in Shaker, and we take it for granted. That is not true throughout the rest of the region. And this asset is not being exploited as much as it could be. If we look at what happened, let me give you 2 quick examples. The Van Aken development and Sugar and Highlands, right down the street. Van Aken development, you can get there from here because it's connected. It's a quality connected place. Sugar and Highlands, which frankly I was involved in the planning of 25 years ago, and we had a blue line extension earmarked from Eddie Fian, which the developer did not want to execute. You can't get there from here. You can't get to Eaton, you can't get to Hoosier, you can't get to those jobs. That long term will make that less competitive. It already is. How can we, when we're looking at Randall Mall, when we're looking at what happens to Severance, if we're looking at Richmond Mall, if we're looking at the future of South Euclid, all of which are served by RTA, how do we maximize that? How do we connect the dots of downtown, Detroit Shoreway, and Lakewood to fill in the gaps along Detroit Avenue? How do we maximize more development on Euclid Avenue? We spent $250 million on the Euclid Corridor project. There are significant challenges to making that happen in a marketplace which outside, I would say, of Shaker Heights really doesn't understand transit-oriented development. Shaker Heights and University Circle do. The rest of the region doesn't look at transit as an economic development tool, but more so as a social service. And I would suggest to you, if we're looking at changing markets, if we're looking at changing demographics, and if we're listening to our neighbors all across the region, and Joe remembers all those meetings we went to. We engaged across 12 counties, meetings everywhere, engaged about 6,000 people directly in this. What we heard uniformly, whether we were in Ashtabula County or Cuyahoga County or Wayne County or Lorain County, people want more transportation choices, they want more housing choices. One size fits all, the bigger house further out is not the model that people want uniformly anymore. And I would suggest to you that in the entire Northeast Ohio region, Cuyahoga County, particularly the city of Cleveland, the first suburbs, is best positioned to to take advantage of that latent demand. I saw it in my own staff. As Joe, you moved from Akron to Cleveland. Others moved up here because this is where it is. And this is where you can get those choices in housing and transportation. So our long-term perspective is to take advantage of this, and quite frankly, for the lessons of Shaker, particularly projects like the Van Aken project, to be seen as a regional prototype, not as a one-off, not as simply a wonderful project in Shaker, but this is how you do it. And bring people out here and show it, but also work with our team, make sure that that agency has the funding to run the buses. And that means it's everybody's issue. It's not just Joe Calabrese. It's an economic development issue. But also work with our communities, such that, for instance, getting Cleveland and Lakewood to work together on form-based zoning so that we can fully exploit the opportunities along the bus lines that connect those places. A lot of challenges, but the key latent opportunity that is not being fully exploited is to plan for and develop for future markets using the assets we have in place in our established communities.
Before you sit down, could you just tell us what are the obstacles to getting buy-in from the powers that be, and I'm thinking of businesses here,
Well,
to this sort of concept, and then we've got about 3 more minutes to discuss this.
Well, I think in terms of the businesses, it is making the case that this is an economic development asset. That means taking the observation that County Councilman Jack Schramm made about people complaining that they can't get employees paid to park. The article recently in Lake County about that. The information you're finding, the communities say, we can't get employees. We're not attracting employees. Make the connection. This is not simply a social service. Portland understands that. Cleveland does not. So we have to make the case. We have to deal with the HR people who are trying to recruit talent. We're also dealing with the guys that are trying to get the product out the door and can't get reliable workforce because they can't get out there to Twinsburg or Solon or wherever. Make the case, make the link, educate our business community, educate our political community that this is a critical issue, and it's not just a Cleveland issue, it's a Reading story in the Plainview. It's all Northeast Ohio. It's all the systems here that are going to be adversely affected by this current problem. And that is going to make us, as a region, less competitive. People are looking, when they come to places like Cleveland, and they have other choices, they're looking to be able to get around.
That is a great summary of the toughest issue of all. Now I want the panel to discuss it, but Michael, you might start distributing cards so that people can submit their written questions while we're there. Anyone want to chime in on this? Armond?
Public transit is, Hunter has very well described a number of the issues that are involved in public transit. It's a major, major issue. And I totally agree that this is an economic development and workforce issue as well. We've heard that from businesses all over, from people who are trying to get to jobs all over the county. I would make one little change in what Hunter said when he said Portland gets it, Cleveland does not. I think it's Oregon gets it, Ohio does not. Cleveland gets it. We, as a county, put in, if I'm getting my numbers right, something like $200 million a year for our sales tax for public transit. You look at what the state does for public transit for the whole state. It's minuscule. It's embarrassing. It's not, and now we're looking at compounding the problem because the managed care Medicaid sales tax is going to go away come next year. That will have, I'm told, about an $18 million a year hit to the sales tax that the public transit gets for Northeast Ohio. And by the way, the county government will have a $21 million hit when that goes through. So we're going the wrong direction, not the right direction in terms of support for public transit. But Cuyahoga County gets it.
Okay, that's good.
That's correct.
Earl?
One of the great things about Hunter's work is that he's projected our current trends out into the future And unfortunately, if we don't make major changes in our direction, the future looks pretty dismal for our region. We're increasingly moving into what some call a donut situation, where there are reasonably viable outer ring suburbs and then a big hole in the middle. And I think a good part of Hunter's work, which I strongly support, is a focus on strengthening the inner core. And that means Cleveland and the inner ring suburbs. And we have a great opportunity because more and more people want a more urban lifestyle and are attracted to the kind of lifestyle we offer in Shaker Heights, in Cleveland Heights. But we have to have the resources to be able to take advantage of that trend. Public transit is a key part of that. The amount of money that the state contributes to public transit in Ohio is absolutely pathetic. And I know Sean Malone's working on this, and others are trying to do whatever we can to strengthen that investment. But we do need to find ways to invest in our core if we're going to be successful long term.
Eddie?
I'll just give you an anecdote. We met with a business executive of a large corporation yesterday, and we asked him, what's the one thing that we can do in the county really to keep you here, but also to attract more businesses, ancillary businesses, to what you do? And they all said, you have to regionalize. What you've done, balkanizing 59 communities, is really a disincentive for us to invest in the county. And so that message was very loud and clear, and we hear that all over, especially from business leaders. You got to regionalize it, because that's a way to attract more investment and more businesses to the community.
Okay, you all have asked some terrific questions, and they don't particularly overlap.
That's a shock.
This is Shaker, right?
So, to do, and I think it'll kick off something else. So let me start with East Cleveland. The question, there were two questions along these lines. What will happen to East Cleveland? What are the lessons for other Cuyahoga County communities? And then we have a question from somebody who lives in Cleveland Heights in a beautiful home on a quiet street, perfectly maintained. This person cannot sell it or rent it because the real estate websites are saying it's not a safe neighborhood, and there's fear mongering going on. I'm terribly afraid this may be near the border of East Cleveland. So what is the future, the ideal regional solution for East Cleveland, and what do you all predict is going to happen? Earl?
Well,
I don't want anymore.
this is one of the reasons that I think we've got to take new directions. What's happening in East Cleveland is that they've really reached the point where they cannot provide basic effective services, police, fire, public works. And they've been relying extremely heavily on their neighbors. Cleveland Heights, South Euclid, to some extent Shaker, particularly for fire services and EMS services. And but Cleveland Heights and South Euclid and these other communities have their own needs. And they're also providing aid, mutual aid to us. And so they really aren't in a position to provide the kind of services that are required. So long term, we've got to find a way to bring resources from throughout the county to a place like East Cleveland. If that community is going to be viable and it's going to be a good place to live. And as the further question indicates, it's not just East Cleveland that's affected, because if East Cleveland is not viable, it impacts the neighboring community, Cleveland Heights. We've got to find ways to do things differently, to bring resources to places like East Cleveland so that they can be viable, can provide the kind of services that we all should have a right to expect.
I think that was just the answer to the subtext in this forum, which is what's in it for Shaker or for any other suburb to try to think regional. So I'm not going to expressly ask that question. I think Earl just answered it on behalf of everybody, not just Shaker. Someone else said, what other than altruism could be an incentive for the cash-rich suburbs to share their resources? Eddie?
Well, no.
They're all blank.
It's really about services to provide to your residents. Communities just can't do it alone anymore. That's a basic fact. No one can deny that. My city of Solon, we're merging into the Chagrin Valley Dispatch Center. It's going to save us a lot of money, but the most important thing, it's going to provide better services for the residents. And people are finding out all throughout, especially in the outer ring suburban communities, is if you merge services and you join, consolidated dispatch centers where you have new technology and professional training and responses, not just from your own community, but from 13 or 14 other communities, and be able to have that updated, monitors and be able to look at real time about what's going on in a situation, you're actually providing better services to your residents at less cost. And so everyone's realizing that in this day and age. People just can't maintain, whether you're Westlake, whether you're Independence, people can't maintain those robust budgets anymore. When you have police and fire, you have union contracts, you have raises built into the union contracts every 2 and 3 years. Cities just can't maintain that. And so people are all throughout the county are looking for ways to consolidate, to share. The mayors in the region have realized it, and they're providing leadership to make sure, because ultimately they have to survive as well.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm just going to add, a number of years, not that many years ago, cities had a number of revenue streams that they relied heavily on. And this applies to East Cleveland, it applies to other inner ring suburbs, it applies to all communities. And the state took away a number of those revenue streams. But they said, look, we're not going to hurt the cities by doing this, so we're going to create a local government fund to put in money to make up the money that you're losing. And that worked well up until just a few years ago. And then what happened was the state started cutting the local government fund without making any money back up to the states. So cities like East Cleveland or Shaker or any of the cities in Cuyahoga County lost huge amounts of money from not only local government funds, but other changes that have been made in the laws of the state of Ohio without making those up. We have right now a state that has $2 billion sitting in what they call a rainy day fund, which could be used, some portion of it could be used to make up those significant draconian cuts that have been made to cities, which then have forced them to make cuts or make changes in the cities. Now, some cities like Shaker and others have had enough resources to be able to continue high-quality services. Some cities, like East Cleveland, didn't have those other places to rely on, and that's why I think, in part at least, you have some of the major problems.
That was really important, and the follow-up question will be related to it.
The answer is advocacy, by the way. If you have elections coming up, talk to your state legislative candidates when they're running and ask them their position on it.
Yeah, and I know how hard Armond has fought for us at the state level to prevent that kind of thing from happening. But let me just say two things about the question of what's in it for the wealthier suburbs. First, the next suburb's problem is our problem. The next community's problem is our problem. Cleveland's problem is our problem. Cleveland's problems affect our borders, the require us to put more police resources into our borders to kind of deal with problems that spill over from Cleveland. If we don't remain East Cleveland's problems are Cleveland Heights' problems. If we don't remain strong, our problems will be Beechwood's problems. So there is a selfish interest that we all have in working together. The other thing is we have to have an attitude that we're all in this together. The mayor of one community pulled out of the Cleveland water system. It was an outer ring suburb. And what did he say? He said, I don't want to be responsible for dealing with the old infrastructure in Cleveland and the inner ring suburbs. Now that's exactly the wrong attitude. He has a share in the issues that exist in the inner ring suburbs. It's made our water system weaker. We're all going to have to pay more. And in the long run, being part of a weaker county is not going to be helpful to that community. So a lot of it's just attitude that we're in this together.
And I think the follow-up question, Armond, in addition to advocacy is, what, or maybe Hunter, what role could NOACA or some progressive thinkers at the state level play in order to improve the way we're using scarce resources in this county? NOACA's trying to, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, NOACA is a 5-county metro. It is attempting through its planning efforts to get better balance. One of the things we were able to do in the Vibrant Neo work, and you know this, Judy, is to look at the consequences of the current pattern on all 12 counties. And unlike the notion that, okay, well, Cleveland or Akron or Youngstown may be going down, but we're fine. What we found was the current pattern of outward migration, inward abandonment, and building more infrastructure does not only hurt those communities like Summit County and Cuyahoga County and Mahoning County with older communities in it, but also weakens Lorain County, Cuyahoga County, Medina County, because they are building more infrastructure. They're going to have to pay for maintaining that infrastructure and the police and fire for the new population. But did I tell you the population of the region of the job base hasn't been growing?
Yes, you did.
So they wind up worse off 25 years from now than the worse off community today. The entire region hurts. Part of what we think we can continue to work on is to give decision makers the scenario tool. What happens if Medina County is going down a path that will weaken it as it absorbs another 100,000 people mainly in Cuyahoga County? What are their options? It makes the case, as you all know, Earl, that we are all in this together. We share a common employment shed, we share a common population shed, and none of us in the aggregate are growing. So how can we work together to reverse that? Because ultimately, the entire region needs to grow for these Cleveland to grow.
And just to add on NOACA, NOACA is key to especially transit issues, public transit, and so Grace Gallucci is the director. She does a really, in my view, an excellent job.
Lives in Shaker.
We have met with her. The county is well focused on this public transit issue, and I don't have answers yet, but we have. This is next week. I'm having my second or third meeting with Grace and her team, talking about how we can potentially draw down some additional funds. We'll see. I don't know if it'll happen or not, but we're trying.
Thank you. Eddie?
Just historically, there hasn't been great partnerships with the private sector on a lot of various issues, but I think we've come of age in the community. I think we've come of age as a government to begin having discussions on these public-private partnerships. I mean, Armond mentioned the public-private partnership on pre-K, and because of Armond reaching out to the business community to really provide the dollars necessary. The other area, frankly, in transportation, it's the business community that needs the employees to get to work. Whether it's in Solon or Independence or Beechwood or Westlake, it takes 90 minutes from the city of Cleveland to take a bus to work. I mean, that's, if you think about 3 hours just in public transit to get to work, and then having to think about, child care and what am I going to do with my child after school. I mean, it's just an untenable situation. And I think the business community is more than willing to partner to solve a lot of these vexing issues, because as we realize, the cavalry from Columbus, the cavalry from Washington is not coming. And so we have to collectively, within our own community, solve the issues, and the private sector really becomes an important part of that.
I want to end on two very positive questions. And I don't know to whom this should be directed, but what would a really fabulous lakefront development in the city of Cleveland do for countywide economic development?
Well, right now, clearly, the lake is one of our greatest assets in Northeast Ohio. And there are things happening, good things that are happening on the lakefront. The Metro Parks took over Edgewater, and it's well used. There's thousands of people on the nights that they host events there. It's tremendous. The Dick Pace program. I don't know if any of you were at the Republican National Convention. Welcome to the community. It was out at what's the name of that park? The park. It was. I've never seen. It was thousands of people out there on the lawn. Three Dog Night was playing. There's a restaurant there now. They brought in other food. We had a beautiful sunset that night. It was wonderful, and every single person there. Lots of people from out of town saw that and said, this is a great city. Lakefront activity is happening, and as I think Eddie mentioned, we're helping to fund a major renovation lakefront project in Euclid. When you talk about lakefront, the lakefront is not just little downtown, it's countywide, and there's things happening all along the lakefront, and we're trying to support it where we can. It does have a big impact.
Yeah, I think what's changed now, I've worked downtown since 1986, and all of a sudden now I'm seeing young people that actually live downtown. I don't know, it's about 16 or 17,000 people. They're going to demand lakefront renovation, I can tell you that. It's a new generation of millennials. They want a lakefront to be able to bike and walk and run, and they want restaurants and amenities and entertainment on the lakefront. And I think things are going to change because this new generation is going to want it, and they're going to demand it from the city leaders.
And it's not just the lake. If you haven't been to the east bank of the Flats, you need to stop down there. It is hopping. It's active. There's a lot of good things going on, and it's beautiful.
From an economic development perspective, the lakefront, the riverfront, and the national park are the three regional assets that we all share. And that's all 4 million people in Northeast Ohio. The challenge has always been to convert the industrial lakefront to non-industrial purposes. It had an economic development purpose in the industrial era. It has to have an economic development purpose in the post-industrial era. So fixing it up, but also connecting. Because if you can connect the lakefront all along the lakefront, one of the things that Congresswoman Capter has been promoting, if you can connect back down as the East Side Greenway is doing, so the lakefront becomes a Shaker Heights asset, not just a Euclid asset. And Euclid takes advantage of that and strengthens its multifamily neighborhoods along Lakeshore Boulevard. Also, you can start out here and connect. It's a process of thinking about, this is a shared asset, how do we connect it, how can we bike from Ashtabula to Lorraine? Can't do that now. How can you bike from Cleveland to Washington? You could, but we need a few links. That becomes a very big play. That puts Northeast Ohio into play as an open space, outdoor, recreational. That's another thing. That's another thing that Portland and Seattle and places like that have. That's what we can do.
That's terrific. The final question is, points out that CWRU and apparently CSU have a program to provide a discount to graduating seniors who want to buy a house or maybe an apartment and stay in Cleveland. Is this a smart strategy?
As somebody who sold a house in Shaker Square to a woman who works for the Cleveland Clinic, yeah, it's a really smart strategy. It's a really, you know the Shaker market isn't always the strongest in the last couple of years. It's a really smart strategy. Yeah, I would hope, Earl, that it expands beyond simply the city of Cleveland to the first suburbs, because it provides that not insignificant kick, but encouragement as well to say, this is a smart deal. And I think it might have helped with our parents to say, yeah, Dad, it is a smart deal to invest in Cleveland. Look at what I'm getting from the clinic. And look at the neighborhood I'm buying into in Shaker Square. The more we can incentivize the millennials who are living in apartments downtown to make their next move to the first suburbs and make those, in fact, the place that they can raise a family. If they don't want to do it in Cleveland, do it in Lakewood, do it in Shaker, do it in Cleveland Heights, do it in Bedford. But every incentive needs to be on it to make this the smartest thing you can possibly do.
Wow, that was
Judy, I just want to point out that we are continually looking at ways to be creative from the standpoint of housing. Actually, Shaker's market is very, very strong among the inner ring suburbs, way above everybody else. But we constantly need to look at ways to strengthen our market and attract more people here. And we have adopted a program of tax abatement for homes in the Moreland area, which is an area that we see as having real potential for the future, and we're continually looking at new ways to bring residents here.
And that's the sort of aggressive approach that needs to be put in place if we're going to follow some of the fundamental recommendations of the Vibrant Here work, which is to invest in established communities. So when Earl's talking about investing in Moreland, that's what it means. These are things we need to do, and we need to do them in scale, and we need to do them not just in Detroit, Charlotte, Ohio City, and Tremont, but all throughout Cleveland and the first suburbs.
And to see it creatively, to give Hunter his due. He briefly was a consultant for Shaker and pointed out that part of Moreland could be an IT, very fast, high-speed neighborhood, 1 or 2 blocks from the Rapid. Great starter homes for people who are wanting to start their own business or get going. It was a brilliant planning idea. We didn't do it, but it's still a good idea, and all it lacks is capital money.
Well, one of the things I will say is that the warehouse district, frankly, isn't any different today than it was 30 years ago. Same buildings, but they're not empty. Part of what we were talking about then with Moreland is reconceptualizing these places, understanding the assets we have to work with. There are more assets, infrastructure, civic assets, park assets in these communities than in some of the newer places in Northeast Ohio, and certainly in newer places elsewhere. But we need to start thinking about them with new eyes, with fresh eyes, and that's Earl, what you've been doing, Judy, what we were talking about, and that's the sort of process by which we rethink and revalue and reposition these legacy assets.
So I sat on mayors and managers for 8 years. This is some of the more creative thinking you're going to get. This has really been a wonderful panel, and thank you for allowing yourself to be pushed. I think we're going to just allow each panelist to give 1 or 2 minutes of, in 5 years, what's your hope for how we're thinking about regionalism in this county? And then we'll have a thank you to the host. start with you, Armond.
Well, I just want to first agree with you. It's a great panel. I'm honored to be included on this panel. I can tell you that Earl Leiken has been a great advocate for Shaker countywide and a great leader in the inner-ring suburbs efforts. He's been a longtime friend, and it's great to work with him. Under Morrison, I'll tell you, when it comes to urban planning, there's nobody better. Hunter is fabulous. His vibrant meal when you're really sleepy at night, you should pull that study out because it's really excellent. It's long, but it's excellent, and I have read it, and it's it will be a good guide for Cuyahoga County for a long time. And Eddie's here because he works for us.
Still on the clock.
But I'm excited with where we're going with regional efforts. There's been slow initially, but with the change in county government and the emphasis on regional collaboration and creation of a department that Eddie heads, we're doing a lot. I mean, we didn't even get into just a small portion of all the things that are going on right now, in regional effort. So it's very exciting. I think we're saving communities a lot of money. We're helping communities build better services, deliver better services to their residents, and 5 years from now, I want to see us doing a whole lot more than we're doing today.
Earl.
Well, I want to say we're so committed to regionalism in Shaker Heights. We've created a whole task force, an efficient 21st century government task force that's led by Trey Roeder, and strongly supported by Anne Williams and Sean Malone and other members of our city council to work with our administration, look for more opportunities for regionalism. Armond and Ed are doing a great job at the county level of encouraging regionalism, and in fact, they provided $1 million for our joint fire police dispatch center, and are continually pushing on all of us to do more by way of regionalization. My concern about the future, and Hunter does a great job of looking into the future, is that absent some great economic boom in our area, we're going to need to restructure ourselves if we're going to be able to succeed in the long term. We have shrunk in population, we have shrunk in tax base, and the only way we're going to overcome those problems is by collaborating together in creative, effective ways to deal with the delivery of services in a manner that doesn't overburden our residents with the costs. There's an expression I often use, and my council members are sick of hearing it, but it's so applicable to this situation. I'm going to use it one more time. It wasn't the strongest of the species, nor the most intelligent, but the ones most adaptive to change that survived, Charles Darwin. And that is just so applicable to what we've been talking about tonight. We need to change, and we need to do things differently, and we need to recognize our problems. We need to look into the future and see what our future is if we don't make those changes. I'm very hopeful that we'll be doing those things in Cuyahoga County in the long term, and that we'll have a bright future that includes much more substantial regional efforts and regional collaboration to get there.
Well, Judy, it's always great to come back home.
Good. Good to have you.
It's always great to come back to this neighborhood. I grew up a few blocks away in Winslow when I was a kid. And I think, Joe, that the reason I became a city planner is I grew up in Evans, Orange, and development. We take for granted what we're talking about. If you read, if you understand, if you sort of get into the nuts and bolts of Vibrant, many of the lessons that we're talking about that need to be learned across the region are woven into the fabric of a place like Shaker, which you can be born and die in the same community, which you can get around in a variety of ways, which is walkable and convenient, has a remarkable sense of community that has allowed it to survive and prosper for over 100 years. That's what sustainability, resilience, and agility is all about. I would hope 5 years from now that the tendrils of regionalism, which are now manifesting themselves in a very real way, and Armond, I think with your leadership and with the new structure, there's a real sea change that I see looking across this county relative to others in the way in which you're able to respond to the future and leverage the resources. But I think 5 years from now, I'm hoping as an Irish storyteller that we tell a story, that we document the things we're doing, that the projects such as the lakefront, such as the project in Euclid that you talked about, such as the Van Aken project, are more than simply a project in Euclid that the mayor has pride points on, a project in Shaker, but are really harbingers of the way to do things. That we live and breathe this new way of re-engaging with each other in cities and urban places. And that we talk about it and we teach it, and Bob, we do that at the university. That people come to Northeast Ohio to learn how to do it because the entire Great Lakes is going through the same challenges we are. There are many communities that need to learn how to adapt over time to have a long-term life and not just one business cycle or generational cycle. And I think we're in a position in Cuyahoga County to do that. We're already doing it. But 5 years from now, I'm hoping we tell a stronger, better, clearer story based on the cases and the examples and the success stories we've been building on. Then the world beats its path to our door, because then this is a really cool place.
Thank you. Eddie?
So, thanks for inviting an old Heights Tiger here. I know it's a little blasphemy to say I actually,
There are two of them.
I'm a Heights Tiger. But I'll give you just two things, if I could throw that out there. You mentioned, what do you see in 5 years? One, as I have a little bit of passion and interest in having a countywide or regional public safety system. I think it's critical. And we mentioned East Cleveland, but East Cleveland's not alone here. I travel every day. I meet with the mayor of Maple Heights, and the mayor of Maple Heights is in a very similar situation of what East Cleveland is in. She could basically fund police and fire, and that's it. She doesn't even have the resources for garbage collection, to fix her sewers, and that's why the county does sewer work there. She had to close her pools. She doesn't have a recreation department. She barely has a functioning senior services department, and that's just Maple Heights. I go to Garfield Heights. I go to Parma. I go to Bedford. I go to Bedford Heights. I could go on and on and on. That it's not just East Cleveland, and we have to wake up. And so, number one, having a robust regional public safety system with dispatching, with police, with fire, with regional jails is going to, number one, save the cities millions of dollars. The cities would still be able to function and have home rule of a mayor and city council, but be able to provide those services, those critical services for its residents. I think, number one, we've got to be able to provide it. If we're going to continue to have home rule in 59 autonomous regions, but yet provide contracts and provide services for the municipalities, and not just public safety, but infrastructure work and master plan work and IT work and HR work and all the things that we took for granted a generation ago that all the cities can provide, but they can't do it anymore. And then my second issue would be, we go out and visit businesses all the time, whether it's Eaton or whether it's Nestle, Highland Software, all these companies that have grown here, become a part of our community. And the one thing we ask them is, do you have ancillary businesses, distribution centers, production facilities, and they're all around the country. And we always say, what would it take to bring those companies here to make sure that you have those services locally? And so we're starting to realize the transportation system, the public transportation system needs to be fixed. We need to emphasize The cost of bringing a distribution center from California or from New York is so much cheaper here that we need to really promote that to make sure that we can sell that to Eaton, we can sell that to Nestle, and how much they would save to be able to have a distribution center, a supply chain right next to them. And then lastly, the one thing that we always need to promote is the lake. All of these companies need natural water. They thrive, these businesses all thrive on natural water. And so when the drought is happening in California and businesses are struggling to survive there and they don't have enough water to manage all their resources, whether it's Nestle with bottled water, or with all of these issues that all the other companies have, we want to make sure that we're able to attract these distribution centers and these ancillary businesses to all the great businesses we have, because that's really going to change the dynamic of our community for the long term.
Let's give them another hand.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. What a great panel. If you would mind filling out your surveys that the library would appreciate your doing, you could drop them off in the back. There's a little tray there. It would be really nice if you could help them out.
And thank you to the league and to the library for hosting.
Start the day. Exactly. There we go.
Execute.